this edition of World of Curiosities, we have with us a well-known witch. I just love her to death. Her name is Ginger Strivelli. Ginger, welcome to the World of Curiosities.
Thank you.
Would you tell our audience what your path is? Because there's so many paths, as we know, in the paranormal spiritual sense. So what is yours?
My path is very eclectic. I have a lot of family tradition from my Scotch, Irish, and Cherokee ancestors that I kind of grew up with. My grandmother was familiar with her grandmother and aunt and mother who did what they called water witching and healing and stuff. I also had midwife on the other side of the family. So I had a lot of family trad. But then as a teenager, I studied formally Celtic Wicca and Egyptian. And from there, I've traveled a lot and, taken little bits from various places I've been of the ancient pagan cultures of, all over the world.
For those that don't know, what is a water witch?
The water witches is usually what they called them, or granny witches. They did dowsing to look for whales, where to dig a well was one of their primary functions. They also did health care, midwifing, abortions, healing. They'd take a curse off your cow if your neighbor got mad at you and, cursed your cow to go dry. So that was the kind of thing. But in Appalachia, they were often called granny witches or water witches.
Now, how did you get, because we are in Appalachia, how did you get interested in Egyptian magic?
That was just purely from past life memories. I had a lot of past life memory from Egypt and India and Ireland and Scotland and the Mayan Empire. And so I traveled a lot and, picked up, like I said, I'm very eclectic. So I've been to Greece and Rome and India and Belize. And so I've picked up a little bit here and there of various ancient pagan. I always said what really drew me to paganism was that, 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, everybody on the planet was a pagan. We all worshiped the sun and the moon and the rivers and the wind and love and healing. And that's what really drew me to paganism, that and past life memories of being a priestess or a witch in various cultures.
Of all of the ancient cultures that you have been drawn to, is there one that draws you the strongest?
Yeah, that would be Egyptian. I've been there, I think, 9 or 10 times, and then I lived there for 2.5 years. I hope to get back soon to visit. But Egyptian culture rings very clear to me. Also, my family traditions, of course, as well.
And when you talk about your family tradition, with a name like Strivelli, one would automatically assume Strega, that you have some Strega elements. Is that true?
Not a bit. My ex-husband's stepfather adopted him. He wasn't Italian, and I'm not Italian either. So,
What is your maiden name?
Blevins.
Okay, Blevins.
Yeah, I have
Is
a
that
lot of
it?
ancestry in the British Isles.
Yes, I was going to
Uh,
say.
British Isles,
I
and
love
then
that.
up in Scandinavia are where I've got a little Cherokee. Um, but oddly enough, when my DNA came back, when I did a family, DNA thing online, I had 1% Senegalese, so that's a little interesting. But mostly I'm, Viking, Norwegian, all of those, Sweden and Iceland, and then a lot of the British Isles.
So a lot of Celtic tradition and Viking tradition.
Right.
So do you celebrate? And we are here to talk about the celebrations that you in your path, and of course some of those will cross, obviously many paths, because that's how it is in this
So that's what
spirituality.
brought me to it is, how everybody on the planet celebrated the solstices and the equinoxes for, literally hundreds of thousands of years.
Well, for you, tell us about the Wheel of the Year.
The wheel of the year and the one I shared is one I painted myself, and I use it when I'm teaching. I take a few online students yearly. But you have the equinoxes and the solstices, of course, and then they have what they call the cross quarter days, which would be like May Day or Beltane, and then Halloween or Samhain, whatever you're going to call it, Imbolic or Lady Day in February. Um, so we always Lamaze, we always celebrate by cooking bread. That's one of the other cross quarter days. So we have certain, things we do on those days that often harken back to other religions celebrating them, and sometimes not. We like the maypole dance for Beltane. So, that's certainly a Celtic tradition, and actually very popular here in Appalachia. They used to have big May Day celebration in Canton, where I lived, which is a very small little country town, but they had May Day celebrations. I think they may even still have them, but they're not like they were in the 70s and 80s when I went.
What do you think that is?
Well, Canton's just, really kind of a dying town at this point. The mill closed. But I think a lot of traditions, my grandmother and I talked about it. She was not a pagan herself. She called herself a Baptist, though she never went to church or anything. But she's the one who taught me the things that her mother and her grandmother and her aunt did, because she always said I was a witch like them, which really wasn't a compliment, but she noticed it in me. So she would tell me the things they did as far as spells and rituals and charms. And her and I spoke about it one time, and it's like her mother and her grandmother and her aunt, they did all the water witching and granny witch type things. And of course, their parents did, and their parents, all the way back to when they were in Ireland and Scotland. But it kind of fell out at her generation. Like she had 12, she was one of 12 that her mother had, and none of them, followed those traditions they were in Sandy Mush, North Carolina. So none of them followed the traditions of the family as far as religiously and magically. Not very much. My grandmother would do a few things. She always threw a pinch of bread or cake or something she was making out for the fairies. And she had some strange remedies she would always, give me if I was sick or if I had a problem. She did one of her favorite spells I liked is a pancake spell, where if I wanted it to snow, she would make me a snowman pancake. Or if I was having a test, she'd make me an A+ test pancake. So that was one of the ones that she did a lot, even though, like I said, she really didn't follow it much as her previous family members did. And we discussed that it had kind of, in the 50s the 60s kind of fell apart. And when I was in high school in the 80s, that's when I was taking my formal training too. And I had a few friends who were pagan. And, she noted that it almost died there for her generation and my parents' generation, but we picked it back up, my generation.
And
so
what about
more popular since then?
Absolutely. Do you think that modern media and culture has a lot to do with that?
I think it does. People can, they can find teachers online. Like I say, I take a few online teachers. So even if you don't know somebody personally, next door or up the holler, you can find somebody. That's kind of a double-edged sword, because a lot of people can take advantage of people and say they're teaching them something, or say they're, initiating them. Or I'm afraid we have some con men that call themselves pagans and teachers and priests and priestesses. So it's a double-edged sword. But if you find someone and you can, check with other students and verify they know what they're talking about and they're a good person. I always tell people, if they're charging hundreds, that's a good clue they're not in it for the right reasons and they don't know enough about karma, or they wouldn't charge that much. So they're probably not a good teacher. But you can find teachers, you can find books. The same problem goes with books. Not all of them are correct either, but you can find things online, you can find books, you can find actual people to talk to. And I think that really helps it being, it's a resurgence in recent years.
And I agree with that. And I also think that true magic comes from within, that it is a spiritual thing, that we can connect with divine force, right,
Mhm.
as an individual, and connect with that energy, which creates what some people call miracles or we call magic, right? Um, yeah, and I'm in agreement with that too. When you said that there's a lot of charlatans out there, oh my goodness. I mean, I've known people that have been following this path for a whip stitch, and they have their online class or whatever within literally a couple of years. I mean, it's kind of shocking, but that
It's, I
until
always
something.
tell, I always tell seekers and my own students, if someone tells you they know everything and their way's the only right way, and if they
Mhm,
charge hundreds of dollars per lesson or per spell or per reading, those are not real workers, because real workers wouldn't overcharge because of that karma. And real workers know that nobody's way is the only right way. And
mhm,
they know that they don't know everything.
mhm,
If there's something I don't know, I freely tell my students, I don't know that, but we'll research it and figure it out. But,
mhm,
most of the charlatans, like you say, no, they know everything. Everything they say is perfect. And, And and that's the only right way to do it. And like I said, they usually overcharge, so it's a
Yeah.
little easy to sort them out usually
Hmm.
if you want to go through
Well,
those things.
well, as you know, Appalachian Magic, I'm just an old granny woman, right? Appalachian Magic,
Right.
a lot of it is based on the Bible. I mean, from Appalachia. And one of the things, you know, in as they call it, the good book, my granny did, and that is you'll know them by their works. And if
Hmm.
you see someone that is taking advantage of others, I think that that becomes very, very obvious very quickly, especially to people like us who are very sensitive to energy, right?
Right.
Um,
I always say
yeah.
ask around. You want to, talk to people that have been around them, that have worked with them in circle. And, if you
Mm,
get 3 or 4 people that tell you, yes, they're a good, they're a good worker, they're a true witch,
mm,
then, it's pretty safe to, deal with them. But usually if it's someone, difficult, you'll find they have a lot of minions who kind of are absolutely devoted to them, but then there's other people going, oh no, don't mess with them. So usually you just got to dig for references. It's kind of like hiring a plumber. You ask
mm.
around.
I love that. All right, and back to the Wheel of the Year. What is your favorite celebration?
Well, one of my patron gods is the Holly King, aka Santa Claus, or Jack Frost, or Father Winter. So Yule has always been one of my favorites. We decorate, we do several trees. As a matter of fact, it's January 21st. And we just about 3 days ago got everything taken down because we decorate every room in the house, and the front porch and the back porch. And it's a big deal for us, like I said, but I've always followed the Holly King. He's one of my favorite gods. So I usually get really into that. Summer solstice, when my kids were little, we used to take them to the beach every summer solstice. So that was nice. They're all older and scattered now, off at where they're working or going to school or whatever. So we don't really do the beach trips anymore, but we try to do something to celebrate the solstice. The equinoxes, we have a cute little spell I'll share with you because I raised my 6 kids growing up as pagan, which is kind of rare because most pagans kind of convert when they're older. So mine were raised. But we had a birthday cake spell we did on the equinox. We would put 14 light candles and 14 dark candles representing the 24 hours of the year, or the 24 hours of the day. And it was equal light and equal day. So we had 12 light and 12 dark. And we would sing Happy Equinox to the tune of Happy Birthday, Happy Equinox to you. So we did that a lot. So we always celebrated the equinoxes. Sometimes we go pick apples on the autumn equinox, do some harvesting from the corn or whatever we grew in our own yard. And then in the spring equinox, we always plant a tree. So we kind of go to some pagan festivals local on Samhain and Beltane and that sort of thing. I think I mentioned before, on Lammas, we always bake bread and bake cakes. So it's just some, traditional things that we did with our family.
And what about Yule? Since it is your favorite celebration, what do you all do during that celebration?
We give gifts, of course, and decorate. We watch the specials. I was saying The Year Without Santa Claus is one of our favorites because it has Mother Nature in it, and the Heat Miser and Snow Miser. Of course, my kids always understood Santa Claus was the Holly King, or Old Man Winter, the ancient god, of course, that predated Christianity. And we bake things. We bake a lot of gingerbread and cookies and decorate things like that. And we used to do some charity work. The kids would bag up some of their toys and books they didn't want, to make room for the things the Holly King was bringing us, and we would take those to the Goodwill or something, so that kids who didn't have things would be able to get new things.
That sounds absolutely lovely, and it's a good way to teach your children how to care about others.
Yeah,
Um,
we left the lights on all night on Yule to guide the sun's way back, because the kids very much understood that it was about the longest day of the year in the sun.
mhm,
And then, of course, we still tracked Santa on NORAD, for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So it was
mm.
really nice. We had my youngest daughter still lives with me because she's autistic, even though she's 22. And so we still do a lot of those things that we did even when the kids were kids, me and her.
That's wonderful. It gives you definitely something to look forward to too each
We
year.
love it. Yeah, like I said, we decorate so big. We decorate every room and outside, and so it's always
Yeah.
fun.
You mentioned a spell that you might share with us, and I wish I would have written down what it was in reference to, but you said you might share that one with us. And if not that one, do you have another one that's quick and
Um,
easy for people?
in reference to Yule or anything?
Anything, I think.
Well, I mentioned my grandmother's pancake spell, and that one's
Yeah.
one. It's just a manifesting, and we use that one a lot. If we wanted it to snow, we'd make snowflakes or snowmans. If we wanted to pass a test, we'd make an A plus. Or if my cat was lost, she'd make a cat face one, and it would come back. So we did that a lot when I was growing up. Um, it seems like a lot of my spells go around food. I mentioned the equinox cake one too. Um, the Yule one, the Yule we write letters to Santa telling him what we want, and not just material things, but what we want for the
Mhm,
new year, what we want to accomplish, and we
mhm,
always burn those in the fireplace to send them.
mhm.
So and,
And
and that's a spell. We also use that same spell to communicate with ancestors, like my grandmother, or even further back ancestors will write letters and then burn them to send them.
mhm. It's interesting because I'm willing to bet that half the audience would have thought when you were talking about Yule that your first choice would have been, of course, Samhain or Halloween,
Yeah,
as
and
the
and I do
holiday.
love Samhain. We always dress up. My Appalachian Pagan Alliance just held our 30th annual Samhain lunch. We have it every year at the Olive Garden. They kind of expect us, and some years it's only been 3 or 4 of us, and some years it's been 15 or 20 of us. But we get together. We all come in costume. I always kind of harp on the Samhain costume thing is a spell, and it's actually to bring what you want into the new year, as that's our new year, of course. So, if you wanted to get married that year, you might dress as a bride, or if you wanted to be stronger, you might dress as a lion. So it always kind of perplexes me when the Christians or the non-pagans dress up as ghosts and ghouls. So that's a little strange to me, but because you don't want to be a ghost in the next year. But we always have the big luncheon, and that's more of a less of a family day and more of a community day, because we do the
Mhm.
lunch and we all dress up and we go out and do that.
That sounds like fun. What was the name of your group again?
The Appalachian Pagan Alliance. We
It-
used to do a lot of activism work. We've kind of backed out on that a lot. And we used to keep a newsletter every day. It's one of the, I always say, I know it sounds obnoxious, but one of the best pagan online resources is our Appalachian Pagan Alliance newsletters, because we ran them monthly for 15, 20 years. So there's a
Mhm,
lot of information, a lot of spells there. We don't do it.
mhm,
I backed it out to just do it seasonally, just 4 times a year for a few years there. And I really don't even do it anymore, because the only thing the Appalachian Pagan Alliance does, other than we have a group chat on Facebook, is we have a few luncheons every year.
And is that for anybody in the Appalachians or anybody at all?
It can be anybody at all. We've got people that, are just have roots or family in the Appalachian, or just interested in the trad, that they can join us on Facebook. We used to have it's so old. We used to have it on Yahoo groups, but we're on Facebook now. And like I said, and we do have the website, which is extensive. I don't add much to,
Mhm,
I add something to it maybe once a year or so now. But like I
mhm,
said, we used to add lots of stuff monthly, but there's just so
mhm.
much on there now. And that's just angelfire.com/n as in Nancy, B as in Bob /Appalachian Pagan.
That is an old address, isn't it? I
It is. Like
remember
I said,
Angel Fire back in
yeah,
the
like I said, I think we started in 98, 99.
Oh my goodness. Now, are you one of the founders?
I was one of the we always called ourselves leading priestesses, because I just didn't like the term high priestess. But yeah, there was 3 of us that started it, and we started it, and we had people coming and going. At one point, there was a couple hundred of us. We did a lot of activism work in the schools. We had a big rally. The We Still Work Magic rally was kind of our answer to the We Still Pray rally that the Christian church had at one of the high schools. And it was a public school, so we kind of called foul on that, and made them host one of ours.
Mhm,
And we did a lot of activism work with the schools for minority religions and things like that. and the police and the, lots of things we did back then. Like I said, we don't do it as much anymore, mainly because I was the one doing most of that, and I've kind of retired from it at the moment. But as I'm caretaking, I have 6 kids. 3 of them are autistic that I still have to care for to varying degrees. A couple live on their own, but they still need help. And my youngest lives with me, and I also have my elderly mother living with me. So I just don't have as much time for the activism work anymore. And we used to hold big May Day pole dances every year. That got a little cumbersome too, just because we held it ourselves. So what we do right now is something that's just easier for me, is I hostess luncheons where we meet at a restaurant. We always do it for Samhain. Have a Yule one. We just had our Yule one is usually the first Saturday in the year. And then sometimes we have 2 or 3 more in the middle of the year around the Sabbath.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Now I'm going to put the calendar up and let you go over each one of the Sabbats and tell people, what they represent and, anything else you'd like to add to that.
Sure.
There we go. Oh, by the way, so you'll know, this is actually our guest tonight. Ginger is an artist, and this is one of her pieces. So, Ginger, take it away.
This is a piece that hangs in my living room all the time. I don't remember what year I painted it, but it's probably 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20. And we spin it. As you see, it's a circle, and it just spins. It's not actually a frame. It kind of looks like a frame, but it's painted. And we just spin it every season. So my daughter just changed it from Yule, where it's pacing up for Embolic right now. So starting at Embolic there, that's Lady Day or St. Bridget's Day, or, it's the promising of the coming spring. So we often, do things around the goddess Bridget for that. The next one is spring equinox. We have eggs and bunnies there because it's kind of related to the Christians' Easter, but we always celebrate by planting stuff then. That's when we do our first plantings for the year. Beltane, we like to go to some of the community things where they have the May Pivotal dances, like our group used to have when we were more active. But we like to go out to the community for that one. We also usually plant something then too. Summer solstice, my family we took all 6 kids to the beach every year on summer solstice for 20, 25 years, I guess. And the kids are grown now, and, a couple live in different areas, not local. So we don't do that so much anymore, but we try to have some sort of family cookout or something, and certainly celebrate it. Lammas is always our favorite too. We always bake bread because it's the first harvest. And there were some ancient celebrations that focused on that being the first meal and the first ground flour of the year. So we usually make bread and cakes and things. And like I said, one of our favorite spells is to throw a pinch of bread and cake outside for the fairies whenever we have any. So the autumn equinox, we used to go pick apples. We always do the cake ritual, I think I explained already, and just celebrate the balance. We always, really focused on the balance, black and white, good and evil, moon and sun, male and female. We always focused on that balanced energy on the equinoxes and did things about that. Samhain, as I said, we always do costumes to invoke, our wish for the coming year, and usually have a community celebration that we hostess actually on that one. And then Yule, we decorate everything. We watch a lot of specials, the special shows, and bake a lot of things and have family gatherings. And of course, we have our gifts that we open on Yule night.
All right. Is there anything else, Ginger, before we leave, that you would like to tell people?
I would just say that it's always been one of my things I harp on, is that, hundreds of thousands, 200,000 years ago, everyone was pagan. Everyone was worshiping the solstices and the equinoxes. That's why Stonehenge and so many of the, sites around the world, the sacred sites, are aligned. The pyramids in Egypt, the pyramids in Mexico are lined up to point out when the equinoxes and solstices were, which was so important for them in those ancient times for agricultural and animal husbandry, knowing when to do what as far as planting or harvesting or breeding the animals or such. So it's something that goes back, so far back to the beginning of humanity, that I always think the solstices and the equinoxes are just beyond special and sacred days, and really everyone should mark them.
All right. I would like to thank our guest tonight, Ginger Strivelli, for being with us and sharing her practice and her celebration, what she does during each one of the celebrations of the Wheel of the Year. So thank you, Ginger, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And to the rest of you, our audience, thank you for being here. Without you, it would be very, very lonely. So until next time on Pat O'Keefe's World of Curiosities, stay curious.